The encounter. The meteor shower was supposed to peak at 2:17 a.m., according to Elias Harlow's calculations. At 12 years old, he'd already mapped the night sky better than most university astronomy students. His bedroom walls were plastered with star charts he'd drawn himself, constellation maps that glowed in the dark, and posters of nebulae that seemed to breathe with cosmic energy. Tonight, he sat on the roof of his family's farmhouse, telescope aimed at the western sky. His parents had long since gone to bed, unaware their son had climbed out his window for the 4th time this week. The September air carried the first hint of autumn chill, but Elias barely noticed. His attention was fixed on the heavens. The first meteors had started nearly an hour ago, brief silver scratches against the black canvas of night. But something was different about this shower. The trajectories were wrong. According to his calculations, the meteors should have been moving northwest to southeast, yet these seemed to be adjusting their paths. As if they're being steered, he whispered to himself, adjusting the focus on his telescope. One of the lights grew brighter, larger, moving differently than the others. Elias tracked it, heart pounding against his ribs. This wasn't a meteor at all. It was something else, something that appeared to be decelerating. He grabbed his notebook, scribbling furiously as the object grew from a distant speck to a distinct shape. The craft, because it was definitely a craft, cleared the tree line at the edge of his family's property. It was small, no larger than his father's pickup truck, with a sleek silver exterior that reflected the moonlight. It wobbled as it descended, leaving a faint trail of blue-green light that dissipated like smoke behind it. Elias abandoned his telescope and scrambled down the sloped roof, adrenaline overriding caution. He slid the last few feet, his sneakers hitting the soft ground with a muted thud. Without hesitation, he ran toward the cornfield where the craft had disappeared. The stalks were dry this time of year, rustling like paper as he pushed through them. His flashlight beam bounced wildly ahead of him, casting strange shadows that danced between the rows. He could smell something unfamiliar, like ozone and cinnamon. The craft had carved a shallow groove in the earth, corn stalks flattened in a 40-foot line. Steam rose from the vessel's surface, making the air shimmer around it. Up close, Elias could see that its exterior wasn't simply reflective. It seemed to be constantly shifting, like liquid metal catching the light from different angles. "Hello," his voice cracked as he called out, suddenly aware of how utterly alone he was. Is anyone hurt?" For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like a sigh, a section of the hull rippled and parted. Light spilled out, not harsh or blinding, but soft, like dawn breaking over the horizon. A figure emerged, unsteady, gripping the edge of the opening. Humanoid, but definitely not human. Taller and more slender than any person Elias had ever seen, with skin the color of pale jade that seemed to hold an inner luminescence. The being's eyes were large, slanted with irises that shifted color like oil on water. No hair, but a series of delicate ridge-like structures swept back from the temples. The alien, because what else could it be, wore what looked like a flight suit made of a material similar to the ship's hull. As it stepped forward, Elias saw it was injured. A dark fluid seeped from a wound in its side, and one leg dragged slightly. Elias stood frozen, flashlight beam trembling on the figure. The alien raised a hand with 2 long fingers, palm outward, not threatening, but cautious. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a curiosity that transcended the impossible gulf of their differences. "Hi," Elias said, his voice barely audible. He mirrored the gesture, raising his palm. "You're hurt." The alien tilted its head, then spoke, a cascade of sounds unlike any language Elias had ever heard, musical and fluid. When it realized it wasn't being understood, it touched its throat and made a frustrated gesture. Elias swallowed hard. "I want to help you," he said slowly, pointing to the alien's wound, then to himself. "Help. Fix." The alien seemed to understand the intent, if not the words. It nodded, a surprisingly human gesture, then winced, its knees buckling. Elias rushed forward without thinking, catching the alien's arm. The skin felt cool and strangely textured, like fine suede. Up close, he could see the alien was female, or at least presented in a way his human brain interpreted as female. Her features were delicate, with high cheekbones and full lips that contrasted with the alienness of her eyes and skin. "Come on," he said, supporting her weight. "I need to get you somewhere safe." She was surprisingly light despite being nearly a foot taller than him. Together, they staggered away from the craft, which had begun to sink into the soft earth, the metal seeming to fold in on itself. "Your ship," Elias said, pointing back. "It's—" The alien glanced over her shoulder and made a dismissive sound. She pressed something on her wrist, and the vessel accelerated its collapse, folding smaller and smaller until it was barely the size of a suitcase. With a final ripple, it sank completely into the ground, leaving no trace. "Whoa," Elias breathed. Wow." Their progress was slow. Elias led her to the old tool shed at the edge of the property, far enough from the house that they wouldn't be discovered, but close enough that he could get supplies. The shed had electricity, a space heater, and most importantly, privacy. Once inside, he cleared a spot on the workbench, helping her sit. In the harsh fluorescent light, her injuries looked worse. The wound on her side pulsed with each breath she took, the dark fluid, not quite blood, more iridescent, seeping through the torn flight suit. "I need to get some things," Elias said, miming his intentions. "Stay here, please." The alien watched him with those shifting eyes. Then, slowly, she reached out and touched his forehead with one long finger. A sensation like static electricity tingled across his skin, followed by a fleeting warmth. "Vera," she said, her voice like distant wind chimes. She tapped her chest. "Vera. Vera," he repeated. "I'm Elias." He mimicked her gesture, touching his own chest. "Elias," she said, the syllables strangely accented but clear. "I'll be right back, Vera. Don't move." He raced to the house, moving silently through the kitchen to gather supplies. His mother's first aid kit, water bottles, some leftover pasta from dinner, blankets from the linen closet. His hands trembled as he collected everything, his mind racing with questions. Where did she come from? Why was she here? Was she the only one, or were there others? What would happen if his parents found out? Or worse, if someone else did? The government would take her away, he was certain. They'd lock her up in some secret facility, experiment on her. The thought made his stomach clench. When he returned to the shed, she was exactly where he'd left her, though she'd removed the top portion of her flight suit to examine her wound. Elias tried not to stare, focusing instead on arranging his supplies. "I don't know if human medicine will work on you," he said, opening the first aid kit, "but we should clean that wound." To his surprise, she nodded as if she understood. She gestured to the water bottles, then to her injury. Over the next hour, they established a rudimentary form of communication. Part gesture, part simple words, part intuition. Vira seemed to be learning English at an accelerated rate, picking up words and phrases with startling speed. By the time Elias had cleaned and bandaged her wound, which seemed to be healing even as he washed, she was able to form basic sentences. "Your world," she said, pointing to the small window of the shed, where the first light of dawn was beginning to show. "Beautiful, but dangerous for me." "Why dangerous?" Elias asked, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside her. "Why are you here?" Vera's expression darkened. "Running," she said. "Last of my people. Others. Gone." She made a sweeping gesture with her hand, then closed her fist tight. "Hunted. Who's hunting you?" She touched her temple, then Elias's, then shook her head. "No words yet. Show later." "You're safe here," Elias said firmly, though he had no way of guaranteeing such a promise. "I won't let anything happen to you." Vera studied him, her head tilted. Why help me, Elias? The question caught him off guard. Why indeed? Because she was fascinating. Because he'd dreamed of aliens his entire life. Because he couldn't bear the thought of someone being alone and afraid. Because it's right, he said finally. Because you needed help, and I could give it. She smiled then, a strange, beautiful expression that transformed her alien features into something almost familiar. Humans, she said, the word carrying a weight of meaning he couldn't fully understand. So young, but so. She paused, searching for a word. Bright. I'll come back tonight, Elias said, gathering the bloody cloths and empty water bottles. I have to go to school, or my parents will get suspicious. But I'll bring more food, and maybe some clothes. You're taller than my mom, but her stuff might fit better than mine. Thank you, Elias, Vira said. She reached out, taking his hand in hers. Her skin was cooler than human temperature, but not unpleasantly so. I will wait. As he walked back to the house, the rising sun casting long shadows across the fields, Elias felt a strange certainty settle in his chest. His life had been divided into before and after, and there would be no going back. For the next few weeks, Elias split his life in two. By day, he was an ordinary 7th grader, sitting through classes, eating lunch with his small circle of friends, dodging the school bullies. By night, he was the sole human confidant of an alien refugee. Vera's wound healed quickly, too quickly for human biology. Within 3 days, only a faint silver line remained where the gash had been. Her strength returned rapidly as well, though she remained hidden in the shed, venturing out only late at night when the rest of the world was asleep. Their communication improved with each visit. Vieira had an extraordinary capacity for language, and within a week, she was speaking in complete, complex sentences, though with an accent that made her sound like she was from everywhere and nowhere at once. She told him about her people, the Lyari, a species of explorers and scholars. Their civilization had spanned 3 solar systems, peaceful and advanced. Then came the Drovari, a warrior race obsessed with genetic purity, who saw the Lyari as an abomination because of their natural ability to absorb and incorporate genetic material from other species. It's how we learn, Vieira explained one night as they sat on the shed roof, watching the stars. Not just languages, but understanding. A small exchange, cellular memory. It's sacred to us. Like when you touched my forehead that first night. She nodded. A surface connection. Enough to begin understanding your language pattern. The Drovari called it contamination. They feared we would dilute them. So they began the purge. Her voice grew distant as she described the systematic destruction of her people. How she, a junior xenobiologist, had been off-world when the attacks began. How she'd watched from a distance as her homeworld was engulfed in fire. I am the last, she said, her shifting eyes reflecting the starlight. At least, the last that I know of. I've been running for almost 2 of your Earth years, staying ahead of their hunter ships. But why Earth? Elias asked. We don't have any defenses against something like that. Vieira smiled sadly. Precisely. Your world is primitive by galactic standards. No offense. None taken. The Drovari consider Earth too undeveloped to bother with, and your solar system is in a quiet sector, away from major transit routes. I thought I could hide here, at least for a while, long enough to repair my ship and plan my next move. Elias absorbed this information, trying to imagine the vastness of what she described. Entire civilizations, interstellar wars, planets in flames. All of it happening while Earth scientists still debated the likelihood of microbial life on Mars. What will you do now? He asked. Vera looked up at the stars, her expression unreadable. I don't know. Keep running, I suppose. Until I can't anymore. No, Elias said, the word coming out more forcefully than he intended. There has to be another way. Maybe there are other Lyari out there. Survivors. You could find them. With what? My ship is damaged beyond repair. The emergency protocol I used to hide it also rendered most of its systems inoperable. Elias turned to face her, determination flooding through him. Then I'll help you build a new one. Vira laughed, a sound like crystal wind chimes. You? No offense, Elias, but your species hasn't even established a permanent base on your own moon. Not yet, he admitted, but we will, and I'll be part of it. I'm going to become an engineer, the best one on the planet. And one day, I'm going to build ships that can take humans to the stars. He held out his hand, pinky extended. I promise. Vira looked at his outstretched finger, confused. It's a pinky promise, Elias explained. The most sacred promise humans can make. You hook your pinky finger with mine, and we make a vow that can't be broken. You are a strange species, Vira said, but she extended her own slender finger, hooking it with his. What exactly are you promising, Elias of Earth? He looked into her eyes, blue-green and swirling with colors he couldn't name. I promise that one day I'll build a ship that can take you home, or wherever you want to go. I'll help you find your people, if they're out there. You won't have to keep running forever. The words hung between them, impossible and earnest. Vira's expression softened. In my culture, she said quietly, promises are binding. They become part of the promiser, woven into their cellular memory. Good, Elias said firmly, because I mean it. Neither of them could have known then how drastically their worlds were about to collide, or how that childhood promise would echo across the stars for years to come. The separation. The autumn air grew colder as October deepened into November. Elias had built a small heater for the shed using parts salvaged from an old computer and instructions Vira had sketched out. It wasn't elegant, but it kept the space warm enough as winter approached. For 2 months, they had established a routine. Elias would bring food and supplies, and Vira would teach him about the galaxy beyond Earth's atmosphere. She sketched star maps showing civilizations humans had never imagined, explained the principles of faster-than-light travel, and described species so bizarre that Elias sometimes thought she must be making them up. In return, he brought her books, history, science, literature, and she absorbed them at an astonishing rate. They watched old sci-fi movies on Elias's tablet, Vira alternately amused and horrified by humanity's vision of extraterrestrial life. Your species is so fixated on being conquered, she remarked one night after they'd watched War of the Worlds. Is that truly your greatest fear about meeting other civilizations? Elias shrugged. Humans tend to judge others by our own history, and our history is mostly about conquering each other. Yet you're the one who offered to help me, Vira pointed out, without hesitation. Maybe I'm weird. Maybe you're the future. They had just finished watching E.T. when Elias's tablet pinged with a news alert. His stomach dropped as he read the headline, Unusual Meteor Activity Investigated by Government Scientists. The article mentioned the September meteor shower and reported that soil samples had been collected from fields within a 50-mile radius of their town. There were quotes from locals about strange lights and unusual sounds. They're looking for you, Elias said, showing Vira the article. We need to move you somewhere safer. Vira read the screen, her expression grave. This was inevitable. I've stayed in one place too long. Where will you go? She turned to him, those ever-shifting eyes serious. The question is, where will we go? I've been thinking about this, Elias. I can't keep hiding in this shed forever, and you can't keep sneaking out every night. Elias's heart raced. What are you saying? I've been attempting to reconstruct parts of my ship's communication array using materials you've brought me. It's primitive, but it might be enough to send a narrow-band transmission to a trade outpost in the Proxima system. Proxima Centauri. That's over 4 light-years away. Vira smiled. The signal won't travel at light speed. It will use subspace frequencies. If it works, I might be able to arrange for extraction. Extraction, Elias repeated, the word hollow in his chest. You mean leaving Earth? Yes. and I want you to come with me." The offer hung in the air between them, monumental and terrifying. Part of Elias wanted to say yes immediately, to leave behind school and bullies and the ordinary life that stretched ahead of him like a straight, predictable road, to see the stars up close, to meet other species, to witness things no human ever had. But the other part thought of his parents, who would be devastated, who might spend the rest of their lives wondering what had happened to their son, who might never know if he was alive or dead. "I can't," he said finally, the words painful to speak. "My family, they'd never understand. They'd never stop looking for me." Vera nodded, unsurprised. "I suspected you would say that. It's one of the things I admire about humans, your connections to each other, your attachments. But what about you? Is this extraction plan safe? What if the Droveri intercept your message?" "It's a risk," she admitted, "but staying here has become more dangerous. If your government finds me—" She didn't need to finish the thought. They both knew what would happen: containment, experimentation, exploitation. "When?" Elias asked, already feeling the loss like a physical pain. "I need 3 more days to complete the transmitter. Then, if all goes well, perhaps a week for a response. 10 days, 10 more nights with Vera." It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. But they never got those 10 days. The next afternoon, Elias returned from school to find 3 black SUVs parked in front of his house. Men in dark suits stood talking to his parents on the porch. As he approached, his father spotted him, face pale with concern. "Elias," he called, "these men need to talk to you." One of the men turned, fixing Elias with a penetrating stare. "Hello, Elias. I'm Dr. Reeves from the Department of Defense. We'd like to ask you a few questions about some unusual activity you might have witnessed the night of September 17th. Ice flooded Elias's veins. How did they know? Had someone seen him running to the meteor site? Had a satellite tracked Vera's ship? "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I was asleep." Dr. Reeves smiled, but the expression didn't reach his eyes. "That's interesting, because we have satellite imagery of someone matching your description at the exact location where we've detected anomalous material. Material that doesn't match anything in our geological database." Elias's mother stepped forward, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. "What exactly are you implying, Dr. Reeves? My son is 12 years old." "We're not implying anything, Mrs. Harlow. We're simply trying to gather information about a potential meteorite impact. Your son might have witnessed something important to national security." The conversation continued in the living room, with Elias steadfastly denying any knowledge of the meteor shower, but he could tell they didn't believe him. Dr. Reeves kept returning to specific questions about unusual objects or strange lights. Finally, after an hour of increasingly tense questioning, the men left, but not before Dr. Reeves handed Elias a card with a phone number. "If you remember anything at all, please call me directly." His eyes bored into Elias's, day or night. As soon as the SUVs pulled away, Elias's parents turned to him. "What was that all about?" his father demanded. "Are you in some kind of trouble?" "No," Elias said automatically. "I don't know why they think I saw anything." His mother studied him, her expression troubled. "You've been different lately, Elias. Distracted, secretive. You're always tired in the mornings. Are you sneaking out at night?" The direct question caught him off guard. He hesitated just a fraction too long. "You are, aren't you?" His father's voice was sharp with concern. "Elias, do you have any idea how dangerous that is? And now these government people are asking questions." "It's nothing bad," Elias tried to explain. "I was just watching the meteor shower that night. I didn't see anything weird." It was the first time he'd ever directly lied to his parents, and the words felt like sand in his mouth. But what choice did he have? They'd never believe the truth, and even if they did, they'd insist on involving authorities. Adults always thought authorities were the answer. "You're grounded," his father said firmly. "No computer except for schoolwork, no going out after dinner, and I'm putting an alarm on your window." Elias nodded, accepting the punishment without argument. It didn't matter. He had to warn Vera. Tonight. He waited until his parents were asleep before slipping out of his room. His father hadn't installed the window alarm yet, probably thinking the threat was enough. Elias moved silently across the yard, heart pounding against his ribs, constantly scanning for signs of surveillance. When he reached the shed, he knew immediately that something was wrong. The door stood slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness visible in the gap. Viera always kept it securely closed. "Viera," he whispered, pushing the door open slowly. The interior was in disarray. Tools scattered across the floor, the makeshift heater disassembled, the blankets torn from their makeshift bed, and no sign of Viera. "No," Elias breathed, panic rising in his throat. "No, no, no." He switched on his flashlight, searching desperately for any clue to what had happened. On the workbench, partly hidden beneath an overturned toolbox, he found it, a small metal disc, no larger than a quarter, inscribed with swirling patterns he recognized from Viera's ship. As he picked it up, it activated, projecting a small hologram of Viera. The image was flickering, unstable, but her voice came through clearly. "Elias, if you're seeing this, they've found me. I don't have much time. They're using some kind of energy field to disable my defenses." The hologram glanced nervously over its shoulder. "I want you to know that meeting you has changed my understanding of humanity. You are proof that there is hope for your species among the stars." There was a crash from somewhere off camera, and Viera's expression grew urgent. "I've left something for you. Coordinates. They're encoded in this disk. When you're older, when you've built your ship," she smiled sadly, "remember your promise. Find me." The hologram flickered out as the sound of breaking glass filled the recording. The last image was of Viera raising her hands in surrender as shadowy figures surrounded her. Elias stood frozen, the disc clutched in his hand, tears streaming down his face. They'd taken her. The same men who had questioned him had found Viera and taken her away. He had to do something. Call someone. But who? The police? They'd just hand her over to the government. The media? They'd never believe him without proof. And by the time he convinced anyone, Viera would be locked away in some secret facility, probably being dissected. No, there was only one thing he could do: keep his promise. The following years transformed Elias. The shy, stargazing boy became a focused, driven young man with a single goal that consumed him. He threw himself into his studies with an intensity that alarmed his parents and teachers. Physics, engineering, astronomy, computer science. He devoured them all, consistently at the top of his class. By 16, he was taking college courses online. By 17, he had secured early admission to MIT with a full scholarship. His bedroom walls, once covered with star charts, now displayed complex propulsion system designs and theoretical models for spacecraft that looked nothing like NASA's conventional rockets. His parents were proud but bewildered by his transformation. They attributed it to the trauma of that strange night when government agents had questioned him, a night that had clearly affected him deeply, though he refused to discuss it. What they didn't know was that every design, every equation, every late-night study session was driven by a single purpose: finding Viera. The alien disc had become his most precious possession, hidden in a custom-built case that blocked any signals it might emit. He studied it obsessively, gradually deciphering the coordinate system it used, correlating it with known star maps. The location it pointed to wasn't any recognized solar system or celestial body. It appeared to be a point in what astronomers considered empty space, thousands of light years from Earth. Either the coordinates were wrong, or they indicated something human science hadn't yet discovered. During his sophomore year at MIT, Elias caught a break. A visiting lecturer from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory mentioned a classified project involving anomalous signals detected from a specific region of space, a region that matched Vieira's coordinates. After the lecture, Elias approached the scientist, carefully probing for more information. The woman was guarded but impressed by his knowledge. She mentioned that a new research facility was being constructed to study the phenomenon, a joint venture between NASA and several private aerospace companies. "They're calling it the Deep Space Observation Post," she said. "Very hush-hush, but they're recruiting the best and brightest. Someone with your qualifications might find interesting opportunities there after graduation." That night, Elias hacked into JPL's servers, using skills he'd developed specifically for this purpose. What he found confirmed his suspicions. The government had known about the anomaly for years, since around the time Vieira had been captured. The facility wasn't just for observation. It was a containment center. And among the classified documents was a reference to Subject V, described as an extraterrestrial biological entity with unprecedented linguistic and adaptive capabilities. Vieira was alive, and she was being held at a space station that hadn't been publicly acknowledged. Elias's plan crystallized. He would get himself recruited to this facility. He would find Vieira, and he would keep his promise. His remaining years at MIT passed in a blur of focused preparation. He published papers on theoretical propulsion systems that caught the attention of aerospace giants. He developed a reputation as a prodigy, eccentric but brilliant. And always he kept the disk with him, a constant reminder of his true purpose. At 22, Elias graduated with dual PhDs in aerospace engineering and quantum physics. As he'd hoped, job offers poured in, including one from a company called Horizon Technologies, a front for the government's deep space programs, including the observation post. The interview process was rigorous, including extensive background checks and psychological evaluations. Elias carefully constructed a persona that would appeal to them: dedicated, brilliant, slightly obsessive, but ultimately loyal to human interests. He made it through the initial rounds, then the security clearances, and finally received the offer he'd been working toward for a decade. 2 months later, Elias found himself on a shuttle bound for Earth orbit, where he would transfer to a larger vessel heading to the Deep Space Observation Post. As the shuttle lifted off, he gazed down at the blue-green sphere of Earth, growing smaller beneath him. "I'm coming, Vieira," he whispered, the alien disk secure in a hidden pocket over his heart. "I'm keeping my promise." The Deep Space Observation Post orbited at the L2 Lagrange point, hidden from Earth by the Moon. It was massive, a sprawling complex of modules, laboratories, and docking bays, all constructed in secret over the past decade. The official story for those few hundred employees cleared to work there was that it monitored deep space phenomena and served as an early warning system for potentially hazardous cosmic events. Elias knew better. At its core, the DSOP housed something else entirely, a research facility dedicated to studying the classified files called Subject V, but whom he had known as a frightened refugee hiding in his family's tool shed. His first weeks at the station were careful reconnaissance. He established himself as a competent, if somewhat socially awkward, engineer focusing on propulsion systems for the station's small fleet of exploration vessels. He made few friends, preferring to spend his off hours studying the station's layout and security systems. Access to the central research hub was heavily restricted, limited to those with alpha-level clearance. Elias had only beta clearance, which kept him firmly in the engineering sections. But he was patient. He'd waited 10 years. He could wait a little longer. His opportunity came 3 months into his posting. A critical malfunction in the station's power grid required emergency repairs in a section adjacent to the restricted zone. As the newest engineer, Elias volunteered for the dangerous work, earning both gratitude and respect from his supervisors. While making the repairs, he managed to plant a small device of his own design, a signal interceptor that would give him access to the security feeds from the restricted zone. That night, in the privacy of his quarters, he activated it. The feed was patchy, full of static, but clear enough to confirm what he'd suspected. There, moving gracefully through a laboratory that looked more like a luxury apartment, was Lyra. Older, changed, her jade skin now paler, her movements more measured, but unmistakably her. Elias watched, tears streaming down his face, as she sat at a desk, apparently working on complex equations displayed on a holographic interface. She didn't look mistreated. Her quarters were spacious, filled with books and what appeared to be art supplies, but the subtle shimmer of an energy field at the doorway confirmed she was a prisoner. He continued monitoring for weeks, learning the security patterns, identifying key personnel who interacted with her, noting times when surveillance was lighter. He began fabricating equipment for his real purpose, not repairing the station, but escaping from it with Lyra. The plan he developed was audacious to the point of insanity. He would need to breach a maximum security section, neutralize advanced security systems, extract Lyra, and commandeer one of the experimental vessels he'd been helping to develop, all without alerting the station's hundreds of personnel until it was too late. Impossible odds. But Elias had learned something from Vieira's stories of her people. The universe wasn't constrained by human notions of possibility. On the night he chose to,